flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Larry Fiddler.
Here.
Greg Day.
Here.
Jerry Dennison.
Here.
Cindy Nolan. Rick Sherlock.
Here. Additions or deletions to the agenda? I believe we've already talked about the attorney and the special meeting, and we're gonna mark that one off for tonight. Is there anything else?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as corrected.
Okay, is there a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Old business, Commonwealth Engineers.
So, thanks for letting us come. I'm gonna let Brady and Andrew do most of the talking since they know all the technical details. But I just brought for you some information, a little bit of information about us, because I wasn't sure if you even knew, who we are and what we do. And so there's a packet like that in there that's got some of the projects that we've got, that we've worked on, and it's got references in there and communities we've worked in. So I just wanted to give you that as well, and then you'll see there's couple of sheets about some funding that we'll talk about as well. But I'll let Andrew Cochran go ahead and, pass out a memo and talk about the findings that he had at the plant when he and Brady and Troy and Brad spent some time together at the plant and, did some investigation. I also want to mention to you that you probably know that John Ford also met with us as well, and he's very supportive of you. Moving forward on some kind of project. And I talked to, Jim Coffeyberry today too, and just let him know that we were home here, because West Central is a great partner for you. And I know that they're helping you stand up your redevelopment commission, and they can identify, multiple funding sources for projects beyond these wastewater infrastructure projects. So I talked to Jim and let him know that we were over here, and he was very encouraging as well, so.
I think one of the things that brought this site visit on, I'll just kind of talk about from a compliance standpoint. And we all know that over the last few years, we've had some inspections. IDEM wastewater inspectors have come over, and some of the main things that they have picked up on as of late have been sanitary sewer overflows. Just kind of as a refresher, that's something that the town has dealt with for some time. You closed out an agreed order a couple of years ago, but we're still having those overflows. Unfortunately, Andrew's got some imagery that he's gonna share. But unfortunately, these are prohibited. We're always gonna get these big rain events. We were just talking before the meeting, that we're gonna get several inches of rain, but we can't have any sewage discharging from our pipes, if you will. So that's was one of the reasons that we came over, and Brad was kind enough to show us around town. We got a tour of the water system as well, to get an idea of what's going on there. But one of the things I think that we'll go through, we want to emphasize, we work in communities across the state of Indiana, and it's not like you guys have completely neglected your facilities. In fact, your wastewater treatment plant, you've done a lot of improvements and things through the years, and that currently shows. But in order to make things right and make sure that we have enough capacity for development, if that day should come out by the interstate, wherever, subdivisions, what have you, we need to make sure that we get these issues addressed so that we can move forward from a clear from a compliance standpoint with that.
Well, Greg and Larry Kelly heard this, a month ago, I think it was? And I took that same memo, we'll go down the high points, but I included some pictures this time that I started thinking about, okay, if I were on a council and weren't familiar with this type of stuff, I'd want to see some pictures I'm just more of a visual learner. So we'll go over those here in a second, but broken down the memo into, the wastewater treatment plant and the collection system. And, starting out with the good parts about the wastewater plant, back in, 2016, the UV system was upgraded. So if the UV system is an ultraviolet light disinfection system, it kills the bacteria before before the water goes back into the creek, okay? And about 10 years before that, the plant got some new clarifiers. The clarifiers are circular concrete tanks that allow the sludge to settle out. The cleaning water goes over the weir and then down to the ultraviolet light disinfection system. One of the things we noticed was that the plant is very well maintained. You can tell people are working there. I've been to some communities and you would never guess that people are doing anything there. So it was nice to see. It was clean. Like I said, you can tell people are on their game. I know that there was one blower added out there, and I thought Brad meant, is there plans to add 2 others?
We have approved.
Okay, I thought that was on the docket. Okay, so there have been a lot of improvements at the plant, okay? Now, some of the needs, just 2 that we've really noticed in discussions with Brad. One is the fine screen and the bar screen. And if you go to that first picture, that's what the bar screen looks like. It's just basically a screen that will allow the wastewater to go through it. It takes things like plastics and baby wipes out of the system, and it conveys them to a trash can. And the reason you want to keep that kind of stuff out of the operation, out of the plant, it's just a nuisance. It's stuff that Troy and Brad would have to get out of the plant, or it's going to get clogged. It's going to clog something. It's usually an issue if you let that happen. Now, the problem with this is that it's not adequately removing enough screens, according to Brad. Okay, so that's one potential improvement that could be needed at the plant. Another thing noted was the aeration tanks needed some structural rehabilitation. I don't know how old they are, but
1 year.
the aeration tanks,
A little bit older than that. I think the tanks were put in when the plant was put in.
oh boy, okay. And we didn't get into any sort of real finite investigation, so it was something that was mentioned during our site visit. Now, if we talk about the collection system, and we start out with the good thing is that the town has flow meters, and it's also got a televising system. And I don't know of too many towns that have that. And so it's gonna be very beneficial once you get into doing work. The televising system has been used. I believe the collection system's been televised at least once, maybe more than that. My understanding is that things haven't really gone anywhere from there. Nothing's been planned, nothing's been prioritized, but you've got the equipment that if you use it and plan and prioritize, it'll save you money. So that's a big deal. The bad part, and it's really bad, is the infiltration and inflow. And the abbreviation for that is INI. If you go to the next page, this diagram right here, I wanted to bring that in just to show you guys kind of exactly what you're dealing with. You can see on this diagram that it's got inflow colored in like a green and an infiltration in blue. So inflow is basically a direct connection into the sanitary sewer system from a roof drain, from a sump pump. It could be from a direct connection from a storm sewer, okay? The infiltration it's a little different. It's water that's getting in through defects in the system. Your collection system was put in the 1960s and 70s. And that material, that pipe material, is vitrified clay pipe. So you guys probably are familiar with a plant vase, a plant, what am I looking for?
Clay pipe.
Yeah, so if you take a hammer to that, and I'm not saying smack it, just a little bit, it's gonna crack or shatter, okay? That was the predominant pipe material used back in the day, so it's nothing uncommon. Everybody had it at the time. And then once PVC started being used, the PVC's way better. The problem with the clay pipe is that you've got cracks all over the place, joints that are separated, and you're allowing a lot of water in, okay? And the problem with that, you might want to know why that's a big deal, letting stormwater in the sanitary sewer system, is this right here. That is a sanitary sewer overflow. So when your sanitary sewer system doesn't have the capacity, that's what happens. That's what's gonna happen. And so that's a combination of raw wastewater and stormwater blowing out the top of a manhole. Now, it's bad because it's an environmental hazard, okay? So items gonna be breathing down your neck, and they have, okay? The other bad part about it is you're treating water that you shouldn't be treating, so it's costing you money. Every time it rains, you're just throwing money down the toilet essentially by treating that water, okay? The big problem area that we noticed when we were out there with everybody was, what's the name of that? Doe Creek. So Doe Creek, there's a sewer that runs along Doe Creek to lift station 4. Apparently there are a lot of issues there. The problem with sewers being next to creeks is that creeks they start to build up a lot of water, elevated, and that adds more pressure, and that water will get into the system even easier than it does when it's not as high, okay? Now, there's another sheet behind the sanitary sewer overflow. This is a sheet right here that Brady, he's our environmental compliance manager, regulatory expert. One of the many things that kind of separates Commonwealth from the competition. Not very many firms have somebody like him, so he's special.
Is that a good thing? What would you say?
He's very special.
Just ask my wife.
Yeah, so I got this from his research, but if you look at this thing, it's got, it shows the railroad, and during floods, it backs up quite a bit. This is during flooding events. And there's Rabbit Run, okay? There's a couple storm sewers, sanitary sewers, that are in that area. Again, they're probably taking on water that they shouldn't take on because of their location and defects, okay? Now, at the end of that last meeting, we talked about an approach. And we talked about how it would not be ideal to do a Band-Aid fix, right? You guys, it would not be good for the town for anybody to come in here and propose a solution, and then 5 years or less later, you've got IDM on your back again, right? That would be a failure. You're probably at that point where you want to look at a comprehensive solution to take care of these issues, not only from an operation standpoint, the IDM, a regulatory issue, get them out of here. No one wants to mess with those guys, except him. What else was I going to say here? Breaking this project into like 3 components. I see a project where you're looking at rehabilitating your collection system, and I brought a couple things for you guys so you can see. So when sewers are rehabbed, this is a cured in place pipe layer, okay? When this is not hard when it's pulled in, it's soft. It's like a polyester material pulled through the pipe. It's got resin in it, and then you blow it up with pressurized steam, hot water, okay?
Inside the clay piping.
Inside the clay piping.
Yeah.
Because you might say, well, why do you want to rehab your collection system if it's not going to get rid of all the iodine? It'll get rid of about probably 20-30%. This is not just about getting rid of the I&I, it's also about making your pipe new. Because over the next 20 years, it's only going to get worse, okay? So this is a cured in place pipe liner. This is what it would look like on the inside of your sewer system after it's done. This is another type of material that can be used. It's called fold and form. It's a different type of lining system. So this comes soft on a spool. It's pulled through the pipe. It's actually warmed up in this bin. They warm it up to make it soft. They pull it through the pipe. Again, pressurized steam, blows it up, and it cures, gets hard, and then you get your new pipe. So again, we think rehabilitation is a very important part of this process. Then we also believe that making some targeted system improvements is a big deal. So around maybe where Bill Creek, there's a sewer in there. I don't know if the sewer needs to be raised, if we could move the sewer maybe out of the, farther out away from the creek. That would have to be investigated. After those things are done, and then the flow metering, like I mentioned earlier, and a hydraulic model, you can figure out, the third phase could be, is there anything needed at the plant? Because there's a possibility you could do those things and there's still I&I getting into your system, okay? You got new pipes, which is great, but there's still I&I, and there's something at the plant that can't treat that additional water. That would have to be investigated at that time. So that's kind of what we were thinking. That's really all I had. I don't know if you have any questions, but I know these guys probably want to get into funding and answering any questions, and because I know funding is a big part of this, getting this money.
Well, the difference in those two is they're both effective. I guess the pricing's different.
The pricing's different, but you can depending on how busy a contractor is, and that plays a big part in their pricing too.
One is easier to put in than the other, maybe.
Well, it's sometimes it's a matter of preference, and sometimes it's just good to get set your specifications up so that they're competing against one another. Now, this has its limitations because you can only go up to about a 12-inch pipe. You get up to a 15 and larger, the spool is so big it won't fit in the container to heat it. Okay, this is different. So you can go up to really big pipes that are way bigger than what you guys have.
So before we start talking about the next steps, we asked Troy to come because we think that, he's been a good and trusted partner with the community. And we've been talking and working with him throughout this process. And so, I don't know, Troy, if you want to speak to the findings that Andrew made or what your suggestions are for us
Put me
moving
on the
forward.
spot.
Sorry. Yep, sorry.
No, I think these guys have a good approach to what we're looking at. I know we talked about it a few months ago that, the need for a big project, we're at that point, to correct everything. I think we've done as much as we can. Little things, and it's time to get, fix the whole thing. And I think these guys seem to be good to work with. We've met a few times down at the plant, and I think that, we got a good plan. If you guys are willing to, or want to go forward with it, I think they got a pretty good idea of what we need.
And so I'll let Brady talk about some of the details, but we can do this step by step.
Sure.
And we think that the first step that we need to take is to do a preliminary engineering report. Because any funding that you want to get from the USDA or the state revolving fund, any funding is going to require you to have a preliminary engineering report, which in essence is, a plan. And I'll let
Sure.
Brady talk about that.
Right, so basically, a preliminary engineering report's gonna have several chapters, and basically it's gonna have project location, and then it's gonna have existing situation, existing facilities, which is basically a rundown of what Andrew just went through. So it's gonna identify all those problems, and then basically we're gonna have an evaluation of alternatives from that. So that's gonna be something where, everyone is gonna have input in, and we'll have a point in which we have a presentation and lay it all out on the table, and figure out what parts we wanna do. You know, maybe some other things have came up since then as priorities, we can maybe work those in as well. So we'll, you know, have input from the council and of course Brad and Troy on that alternative, that recommended, then we'll get to that recommended solution. And then at that point, you know, we'll be ready to go through, as we were talking about it, in order to get any, you know, essence of eligibility for this, we've gotta submit this to funding agencies, to see, you know, what kind of deal, we can get to move forward with the project. So in terms of, I guess, the size of the community, your median household income, one of the funding agencies that we believe is most appropriate for your community would be USDA Rural Development. They cater to small communities. The thing about USDA is that instead of other funding agencies that only go maybe up to 20, 25 years, USDA goes up to 40 years. And you may say, well, we wanna pay things off sooner. Well, the thing about it is, you think about how long your sewer system's been in place, you know, 40-year loan on these kind of sewer improvements, that stuff lasts a really long time, versus, you know, equipment that may not, it may wear out in 10, 20 years, whatever the case may be. So, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, so the
Sure.
payback can be within 4 years? I mean, sooner if we would choose to, but it can go as long as.
That's the loan, that's,
Yeah,
yes, the
okay.
loan term,
The life of the loan.
exactly, and you can do it sooner.
Yeah.
Sure.
What were some of the rehabilitations you mentioned at the plant? It's gonna be,
Can you repeat that, please, sir?
what were some, you said some rehabilitations that are at the plant, what, examples, some of those?
Well, one was the bar screen, as far as the need, and then, it was Brad that mentioned structural rehabilitation. Now, one of the things that could come out of this study, and, you know, you do flow metering, and, you do a model, a simulation of the sewer system. If it is determined there's a component at the plant that can't treat the water that's still getting in the system, because you might have water that still is more than what you want, right? That's what we have to look at that time. I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
What does all this have to do with the ADA?
It does not. The ADA has to do with basically the community crossings application
I thought
process.
that's what we talked about at the last meeting, and I'd asked, I think specifically, if you folks were just gonna be with the ADA, and I was given the answer, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't recall that conversation. I thought that we had been invited in by Daniel to do the ADA project. And then Daniel had invited us to talk to Troy and Brad about the wastewater needs. He was aware that IDEM was putting some pressure on the community because of your wastewater problems. And so, you know, we've got the ADA project going.
Sure.
And then we just came in at your request, I thought.
This is a separate issue.
Yeah, and Commonwealth has spoken with, they met with Larry and Gray 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Probably 3 weeks.
And they wanted to at least present the information to the whole council so that you would have a better idea as to maybe some possible options, I think, for the town over the next few years.
So basically, I think what we're looking at right now is we need to have an engineering study done so that they can give us true and concrete solutions. But that can't be done without the study.
And the study also gets us funding if we apply for it.
So that's kind of what the meeting is tonight, is to discuss going into an agreement with them to perform this study so we can move into phase 1.
I wasn't aware of that, I was thought it was gonna be ADA.
No, it's just one of their other things that they do.
Right.
This study, how many years would that, how long is it good for us applying for grants? Like 1 year and then we need a new study, or?
It could be a few, absolutely. It would be current to whatever we find your needs would be. this, keep in mind, this is a marathon and not a sprint. So it can take a while to get the right funding package together.
But we need
that
to
makes
start
sense
here.
for the town, absolutely, absolutely. Good
And the
question.
cost for that study is
40,000. And
That's-
that,
what this meeting is tonight.
so that also includes the engineering study. And then the other part of that is what's called an environmental report. So since we're seeking these federal dollars, we have to coordinate with county, the county, state historic preservation. We've gotta coordinate on wetlands, floodway, all those kinds of things to make sure that it meets, the criteria before, we can
And
get funding.
my
So that's-
understanding is that 40,000, part of that we can get back on the grants. So it's not out of pocket per se,
Right,
It's out of pocket to begin with.
but
to begin with, but
it'll be
depending on
credited
what
toward-
funding source
toward the
you
project.
seek, it can be
Yes.
used for a local match, or it can be reimbursable. The state, in essence, is kind of reimbursable by the state revolving fund if you decide to seek that funding by USDA. I mean, it varies, but it's not just, yes, you recover the dollars back depending on what source of funding.
But we need to have this
Seek.
study done before we can do phase one.
Yes.
And before you can get funding.
And before we can get funding.
What was the cost of the ADA study?
I think it was
5,000.
5,000.
You need to keep in mind before we do this, we cannot afford any bonds. We cannot afford any more sewer bonds. So I'm just putting that out there right now. So grants, and we're gonna have to go slow and find ways to fund this.
So we specialize in, one of the things that we do is we work with communities to help them find those dollars. We've got a team of folks that help identify that, and we would be working in concert with Jim Coffinberry and John Ford out of the West Central Indiana Economic Development District. They're aware that we're working on this. They're very supportive. I talked to Jim Coffinberry today. He was very supportive of you moving forward as well. And so, you don't have to do the bond, and I understand that you're out of that. This document, this planning study would identify funding options for you. We strongly encourage you to look at the USDA Rural Development Loan and Grant Program because the deal is so good right now. It's, it's not free money, but it's,
What is the interest rate? Is it 1.3%
yeah,
or something?
yeah, it was ranges depending on, it's like 1.25% right now. So, that varies. But again, you don't have to commit yourself to applying for a USDA loan or grant program. You just,
Sorry, Maureen, I was just gonna say, one thing to keep in mind on the bonds is that some of these programs like USDA will sometimes refinance what you already have at a lower interest rate. Sometimes that, that can make all the difference as well, just something to keep in mind.
I don't know if you remember working with Steve Brock, who's a rate consultant. We work with Steve in other communities as well. And that's one of the things that he does is work with communities, and he feels like he could get you some money back on the bonds. So I reached out to him and suggested that at some point he come and talk to you about the, some options that you've got there. And he's a very, he's a rate consultant that specializes in working with small communities.
And just so you know, all that, and Gary, just a lot of this all stems from back in, April and May when we were kind of trying to figure everything out. We had received communication from IDEM requesting information about inflow and infiltration. And, we worked with UMAC on getting a response for IDEM, but that Holly, I think it's Zerker, had indicated to me that over the next, over the short term, the town needs to get a actual plan in place for improvements. Otherwise, there were going to be.
I've been harping on this I-9 since 2014.
So
Nothing has been done.
she said that unless something happened, there were gonna be punitive measures taken by IDEM, and so with Commonwealth working on the ADA plan for us, it seemed natural to at least inquire about what kind of options the town may have, which is ultimately when Brady and Maureen previously spoke with Larry and Greg, they thought it would be beneficial for this to be presented to the whole council. So you all would have kind of a better understanding too as to some potential options for the future. So,
We
just
have,
to give you some backstory, in case, I don't want you to think, but wanted you to know kind of everything that was going on.
we have done some lining with the, blue liner there.
Okay.
I don't know how many feet, and I really
Okay.
can't tell you where, but some of it I think was done on Rapid Run.
Okay, good.
But,
Is that documented somewhere, Larry?
I'm sure Brad could tell us where
Yeah,
that's at.
Yeah, and Brad wanted to be here tonight, but with the meeting on short notice, he had family engagements he had to attend to.
But, yeah, I mean, you know, we have done some I stuff, but, not nearly enough, and
Needs a lot
there's not a
more.
plan there. And this would give us a plan, goals to hit, and
As Gary says, you've been dealing with this since what, 2014?
I've tried to bring it up several
Well,
times,
it's brought to our attention now, that's why we're trying to move forward.
and, what the town needs too is more stormwater piping to help the I&I. We have very limited, as far as I know, stormwater piping.
but I don't know that that's gonna help I&I. I mean, if you had a manhole getting overflowed during flood stages, that might help, but.
Well, one of the things that we could talk about and suggest is, you know, and again, we're taking this step by step by step, but you could also think about inviting, John Ford and Jim Coffinberry back to talk about doing a stormwater and water plan. This could be funded through Okra, and that you gotta put up just a little bit of money to get a lot of money. You put up $6,000, they'll give you $60,000 to pay for a study. And so, you know, that may be a step that you wanna take as well, as to do, and Okra right now has been requiring communities to do a 2 or 3 utility plan. So that may change, and you may be able to come back and just do a stormwater study. But-
We have an appointment with Okra tomorrow.
There you go, yeah, Dee Dee Lawrence, I think, is,
That might be.
so we work with her in the town of Spencer, where we've done a lot of work and trying to help them solve their I&I problems in Spencer, and they're moving now. We're working on a wastewater project in Spencer right now, and they're about to move into a stormwater study that's being funded through Okra. So there are lots of options down the road, but we feel like we've gotta get, this wastewater is urgent. And Okra, dealing with federal funds, it will take you months and months to even apply for the money and then get the money and then do the study. It's a much longer, more drawn-out process to try to get Okra planning dollars than it is for you to self-fund this PER and then know that you can get some of that money back. You'll get that money back in some form. And we can move quicker, I think, is your experience too, Troy, isn't it, working in other communities?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you're looking at possibly adding another year if you go to planning grant.
Right.
Right.
And the thing is you're not guaranteed it's competitive,
Yeah,
right? So you
yeah.
may have to resubmit,
Yeah.
subsequent years, but
That's
certainly out there.
A good option to think about with stormwater and water, if that's what you decide, once you get going on your emergency, on your kind of immediate pressing needs. So I'm sure Dee Dee will talk to you, we'll give you some options tomorrow about that.
Do we have the funds to allow them to start?
I've talked with Janet, she's been busy, we were gonna talk, more next month, in November, she has more time to talk about that. Yeah, I just don't know right now.
So we think, and I hope this is okay for me to say, Kelly, that we think, that it should come out of your wastewater fund, is where it should come from. And so I know that you're still looking at, your financial issues. It appears as if, you know, from reading your Gateway report, that you have the 40,000 that you could spend. But we defer to you completely in terms of other issues that you've got going.
I can't say right now that we have that much just to pull straight out of our wastewater fund. There's been, we've been catching up and we've been, just fixing things. And I can't say that for sure. I'll know more next month after Janet and I sit down and really go over the budget well.
Will we table this or make a motion now? And Larry, I don't know. Curious.
I'm thinking probably we need to table it.
So we get budget analysis and then you can make a decision.
And we came tonight to talk about this and answer your questions. We did not expect,
Absolutely.
you know, Kelly and I talked, and she's, I think, has got us on the agenda for, you know, your November 10th meeting. So we did not expect you to make a decision. We wanted you to have some time to talk about this and to, you know, reach out to, I included the, you know, in some of this material, I included some references of folks that we've worked with all around the state, including just right down the road in Spencer, and farther down the road in 70 in Terre Haute. We work with Terre Haute as well, so.
The real reason we're here is that he made me come because he told me that I needed to say he was special.
I knew we were gonna get back to that.
That's not gonna ever end.
We just wanted to answer all your answer all your questions, make sure you feel comfortable. This is a big decision for you. You're good stewards of your town's funds, your taxpayers' dollars, so we want you to have all this information, and we can.
I know, I think we're anxious, it's just a matter of making sure we have everything we need.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm just curious, would you start with that on the inside of the pipe, like the sewers first, to stop that overflowing?
It won't
Or
stop
no,
the
the other way,
overflowing.
the other way.
No,
It'll stop the infiltration.
Yes,
of the
yes,
sewer pipe.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
It's slow filtration.
Yeah, well, hopefully it stops.
Right.
Well, at least in that main
Where it's
sewer
at.
lines, yeah.
Couple of questions. How long is the study expected to last?
I believe 120 days is then to get the final product back to you.
And the blue liner you've got there,
Yes.
does it basically replace the existing pipe?
No, this is, this
The
goes
line.
inside the pipe, so the pipe there is called the host pipe, and this just gets pulled in, and it's just on the inside, so the inside diameter is a little smaller, but,
Sure.
it's a structural.
So we still have to worry about the existing pipe and its condition?
Well,
Not really.
no, if that cracks,
Okay, so it
this has,
Kinda does replace it.
yeah, this has
Function.
structural integrity that, this is better than what's out there.
It doesn't reduce the flow, I mean, you know, whatever.
Minuscule
Things,
diameters only
Slightly.
reduce
Yes.
hydraulics, it's
Yep.
not gonna.
But it's just so much cheaper than actually replacing the
Yeah.
plant, that would be extremely expensive.
Yeah.
We've had some communities where that's happened. There's a town up north where they have, asbestos clay pipes, maybe?
Yeah, water pipe.
Water pipes that just crumbled. So
What
they're
one
having to-
laterals also?
The issue with laterals, especially when you get into the funding agencies, they, to get funds for that, they want you to have ownership of the laterals. And that's just it's probably not a good idea. Now, the laterals are probably the major source of I-9. But you getting ownership of the laterals is going to mean that there's a lot that goes into that.
This would have any help in blocking the laterals, huh?
You can block laterals that are dead.
Discontinued laterals will be shut off.
If a lateral is there, but a house has been torn down or anything like that, you can actually line across that
Okay.
entrance.
And if ownership goes to the right-of-way line, I don't know how it's set up here, you could actually run a liner from the main pipe through the lateral to the right-of-way line and stop there, if that's what you wanted to do.
You can actually do that inside the main sewer line?
Yeah, it's just, it's ridiculous, the technology that's out there. Yeah. It's
like
really
putting
amazing.
this
It's a robot.
It is.
Similar, yeah.
Except it's bigger.
A little bigger stand, yeah.
Well, that's good, but would it really help to stop from, the, illegal, like,
Sub pumps?
salt pumps and, roof drain water?
No.
No, I thought we talked about, do you guys have an ordinance?
We have an ordinance for that
Okay.
if it's found.
Okay.
And that's one thing that Brad brought up some time back, that he would like to see us go back to smoking to see where we have
Exactly
some.
where it's going.
But
Televised will do that too, wouldn't it?
what's that? Televised can't do that because you normally don't go up a lateral. Lateral's too small for the camera.
In getting rid of all of the connections is extremely difficult, as you can imagine. There are gonna be a lot of people that don't want the government coming into their houses to inspect that kind of stuff. So really, the way to get rid of those connections,
Through ordinance.
well, through sewer ordinance, and then you could get a few more during the sale of a house. At that, you could set it up so that to sell a house, that would require someone from the town to go and inspect, disconnect over time.
We do
The county's doing that,
that. No, actually, well, it'll be one of the duties, I'm sure, of the town manager when that person is selected and hired to help coordinate that with probably Brad and Richard. So, but we do have the ordinances on the books. And UMAC helped with the sewer use ordinance issue, amending it and making it stronger. Hopefully that'll prevent some of that illegal.
But once the flow meters give us some documentation about what is flowing in, we can see that it rained today, flow went up, and we know that we have I&I issues at that location.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm not sure that, you may know, whether the flow meters are back and.
Yeah,
so-
they're in service, so we'll
Okay.
have some good data
Good.
from down there on the south end.
And Brady and Andrew addressed this earlier, your team down at your sewer plant and at your water plant are doing really good work. And you've done good work keeping up with as much maintenance as possible. And the fact that you've got these flow meters and you've got some video from some camera work, I mean, that's impressive. So it's, we've gone to some communities where they're totally lost and far, far behind and haven't done the kind of good maintenance that we've been doing. But age is, we all get old. We get old and we fall apart, don't we? Some of us are falling apart sooner than others, so. It's a function of age for some of that collection.
Well, I read a thing the other day here, or something, that if you didn't know when you were born, and you didn't know how old you are, how old would you be? So it's kind of like the number.
Yeah.
Right. As old as you feel.
Yes, yeah.
You make it up.
Some days 22,
Yes, yeah.
some days 65.
Any other questions?
What was that, redone or reactivated? Two,
Prior to probably 99?
I thought it was done in 08 or 06.
No.
The clarifiers were put in 06, 07 from my research. And then the UV was 16. I don't know when the rest of the plant went in. I don't know that answer.
Plant was turned up before I ever was on the board.
Yeah, me too. I was thinking it was, done.
It's old.
Well,
I pretty sure it's approaching 25 years. And that's one thing wrong with the screen is, the screen has outlived its life already, and it's something that needs to be looked at real quick.